Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my weekly show where my guests and I play some movie roulette and randomly select a movie from my obscenely large, completely random watch list, all different types of films on here. And we're injecting a bit of some thrills into our discussion this week with Roman Polanski's Frantic. And joining me is frequent collaborator, now friend of the show, filmmaker Carl Kelsch. Thank you so much for coming on.
Shane, it's exciting to be here and talking about movies with you again.
Absolutely. And this is a bit of a different vibe than like Canterbury Tale, our last episode. Is this one is, as I mentioned, a psychological suspense thriller coming to you from Roman Polanski from 1988. And this was released February 16th, 1988 in the UK, and then about 10 days later in the US. The runtime is just about 2 hours. It had a budget of $20 million, but only made $17.6 million. So this did not quite light up the box office. This is from director Roman Polanski, which this is years um, after his seclusion from being able to come to the United States. And this stars Harrison Ford, which was an interesting little bit that I appreciate about the film. And probably most importantly, this is more of a personal thing. This is scored by Ennio Morricone, which is very interesting. And I'm sure we'll talk about the score, but this is one of his scores that's actually lauded as one of his bests, which was interesting to see because it's sparse, but it delivers when it shows up for sure.
Yes.
And this has become a bit of a cult classic film, as it, like I mentioned, it didn't make money at the box office. And filming took place in Paris. And this film's actually referenced in the Bare Naked Ladies song One Week,
Hmm.
which I thought was like a nice little fun little tidbit to throw in there.
Absolutely.
Which I did not realize when they say frantic in that song, they were referring to this. So there you
Hmm.
go. There you go. Um, Anybody who was alive during the late 90s into the aughts knows that Bare Naked Ladies song for sure. Um,
Yeah.
the synopsis we have here is in a hotel room in Paris, a doctor comes out of the shower and finds that his wife has disappeared. He soon finds himself caught up in a world of intrigue, espionage, gangsters, drugs, and murder. Checking all the boxes on
Hmm.
this one. But Carl, what were your general thoughts on Frantic?
Well, as someone who's seen a few films by this director, this was not one that I had seen. Came out when I would have been in eighth grade, and it just something I never caught on video in the
Yeah.
few years after that or cable. And um, I had heard that it's leaned in the Hitchcock territory.
Mm.
The description was intriguing. It came out the same year as The Vanishing. It must have been
Yeah.
talked about in comparison with that. And my thoughts were that it really felt like a solid classic filmmaking in the thriller mode that had an unexpected tone that you really would expect someone like Polanski to put in there because it subverts your expectations. Might have been why it didn't do that well at the box office, but basically, although there's very, very high stakes with this kidnapping and it's all playing out in the course of just a few days, there is a sense of kind of shaggy dog storytelling, kind of lots of tangents and a
Yeah.
few red herrings and this sense that you get in a movie like something like After Hours or something where the character is peeling back layers into a world that Harrison Ford's character is quite square. He's a doctor,
Yeah.
and a world where just he is suddenly going to be snorting cocaine, hanging around with shady characters, seeing a dead body, and seeing all sorts of espionage things. And it just has the feeling of more, rather than just being about a man trying to find his wife, it's more about this, you know, kind of square character who probably doesn't want to think or most of these sides of the world never cross his mind. He's,
Hmm.
somewhat affluent, and suddenly through this one incident, through a really random mix-up, which is very simple exchange of mix-up of baggage at the airport, just suddenly is forced to have these quirky layers of society peeled back, and it is quirky, and that's probably the thing that surprised me the most and made me appreciate it as more than just a big director trying to do a very mainstream Hollywood movie with a big actor.
Well, and I think there's some really important points that you bring up there, Carl, because one, I feel like this film could easily fall into just feeling like your run-of-the-mill kind of thriller that's very paint by the numbers. And it's those layers and, flourishings that I feel like that Polanski layers into this that makes it feel different. And that was a very interesting comparison to After Hours because, yes, this is somebody who winds up being strung out, tired over the course. Like, I know that's like crazy night. This is just, a crazy couple of days, but you can tell, like, Harrison Ford's character here, Richard Walker, is stretched to places that I am sure he never thought he would be. Which I think the moment where he winds up snorting cocaine in that bathroom, like, oh my, we're going to a whole different place with this. And I can see why an actor like Harrison Ford would want to dive into a film like this because, like, I obviously grew up watching a ton of Harrison Ford because of Indiana Jones
Yes.
and because of Star Wars. And but I also absolutely love The Fugitive. And this is a little stranger than that. This goes to I feel like Walker's character goes to some darker places than Gimbal has to go to in that's a little bit more like he's just trying to like, find the one-armed man. But this, he has to do some not great stuff and some morally questionable things to figure out where his wife is. But it's films like this and Witness and Mosquito Coast and like this era of Harrison Ford's
Yeah.
career where it's interesting, it's pushing him into some places, and there's few leading men like Harrison Ford who bring a vulnerability like he does. Because like he could easily play it like he's not affected by these things. He's tall, he's handsome, he has that stature. But that's what makes Indiana Jones interesting is he's vulnerable. He gets beaten out of him a lot. And one of the moments in this film, which you can tell Harrison Ford loves getting little moments to like act as like a little character. And like when he's trying to protect with Michelle's character when those guys show up and he's naked and he's put it on this tough guy and he just gets back and he drops. And I'm like, I appreciate this film for going to places like that because you usually don't see leading men get, one punch KO to the ground by henchmen in movies. And those were some of the interesting layers to this for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where on the page of the script, you wouldn't question anything about this character being kind of square in over his head,
Mhm.
meeting people in a parking garage for a trade-off, but not really having a great plan in place, which becomes quite
Quite apparent quick.
yeah. And then you say, okay, we cast Harrison Ford, and a whole extra layer comes out
Mhm.
with that combination. And I think that the beginning surprised me in the sense that they get to Paris, you're in this foreign location, and you go from a cab into a hotel that's very modern, a peek outside the window at Paris, and then just lots of this sense of like this whole beautiful city's out there. How long are we going to be in this room? And
Yeah,
that opening series of scenes, and it's a lot of scenes, it involves
yeah,
all the little minutia that they're going to do uh, to just decompress from this red eye flight and showers and ordering room service. And it's quite, I think it's quite unconventional in terms of pacing now in a thriller. I think that
yeah.
to stay in that opening scene for that long, to me, that said Hitchcock. That was like a very
Yep.
thing of like, why are we in this hotel room so long? Something really bad is going to happen, and there's not too many, uh, suspenseful things in what you see on screen, but you just know, wow, we're still in this room, so something's going to go down before they even get out of this hotel.
Yeah,
I think the precision and careful storytelling and subtle little things that throw them off with the mix up of the luggage and making phone calls to the airport, just all sorts of things um, that really had me um, riveted to the movie. The storytelling was just so careful. The shots bring your attention to everything you need to know. The very first time he even cracks that suitcase open, you're like, what is the camera trying to get me to want to see? And I'm like,
yeah,
there's something going on. Spoiler, of course, with the Statue of Liberty thing. I just know that
yeah.
that's going to be the thing that we come back to.
Well, and those opening scenes are so important and so methodically put together that just sets a mood. And what I noticed is because when I looked up a little bit of info beforehand, I saw Ennio Morricone did the score, and I'm waiting for like that score to kick in, and a lot of that's pretty quiet. And it's very mundane. It's just, this couple shows up, damn issue with the tire, they're trying to get to this hotel, all of these things. They're in their hotel room. There's this mix up, and I have to give a lot of credit to Witold Baczynski, who's the cinematographer, because the way the camera moves in this film is so precise and so perfect. And like that shot of he's in the shower,
Yeah,
background, you see his wife trying to talk to him, and it's like, dude, or like, please just confirm that you actually hear each other. And I'm like, this is gonna end poorly. And all of that, and they like the camera just like pushing in, and you see her leave, and then it lingers, and you're like, I don't think she's coming back.
yeah,
And if you didn't like look up that this or see a trailer that this movie's about like a wife being disappearing and stuff like that, that's such a great filmic moment of being like, there's impending doom here. What's going on here? And it's so perfectly shot. And then the film get kicks into gear into where it's going. And there's so many great moments of how the camera moves around like people's heads and puts you into some uncomfortable, intimate shots with these characters. And there's a lot of paranoia going on in this film. And I love how they leverage, like you mentioned, we're not like we haven't seen anything of Paris at this point. And then it starts getting into that, and we're on the roof. And you have these angled roofs, and things are going to fall off, and hopefully not people. And those really tense moments, and how the camera moves in those. This is where a really talented filmmaker with a really talented crew can piece together and elevate something that's, pretty standard. Wife gets kidnapped, husband has to find her. And probably one of the biggest things that I didn't love about the film is, to be frank, at the end of the day, I didn't really care about what was in this Statue of Liberty, the whole like MacGuffin of it all. But it was also very Hitchcock, because at the end of the day, does that really matter? And that's the interesting thing. And, it gets caught in the weeds with a lot of like this person and this person coming after this person, and it starts leaning into that, but there's always a sense of danger. And that's what I appreciated about, because like some people wind up dead, some people that we grow to connect with. And I loved how Polanski walked a tightrope here with the characters of Richard and Michelle. And it's like, is there going to be more something to this? Or because this film could have easily fallen into is like, does he wind up cheating on his wife and those types of things? And I think the film does a good job of making you think, will this happen or not? Because there's an interesting bit of connection and tension between them.
yeah. I was happy that the tone and details throw you off guard without having like mechanical red herrings. Like basically when he
Yeah.
opens the suitcase and he thinks it could have some clue to where his wife is, I thought this could easily just take him down a rabbit hole into, seedy bars and characters. And maybe the movie will reveal that that never had anything to do with his wife's kidnapping at all. I wouldn't have been surprised one bit, but I wanted to find out.
Mhm.
And I think that's why the themes came forward for me, because it's like, well, why are we choosing to kind of, you know, there's police stuff and things like that, but why are we choosing to spend so much time with this woman who's a courier and just wants to kind of get her money? Um, and this brought me to what I think is the real theme of the movie. Is this is just kind of, I don't know if I've, yeah, I think I sort of inferred this from my sense of his relationship with her as someone he has to cooperate with, Emmanuel Signet, this courier, to try to find his wife. And he's kind of stuck with her and she's stuck with him. And there's moments where they're bonding, but there's a lot of moments where you realize she'll just go off and get the money or do whatever she has to do, and she
Yeah.
doesn't care about really helping him find his wife. She's charmed by him in certain ways, and she has some empathy, but she has to survive, and she knows that these people are dangerous. And I felt that the theme of this story was this uneasy alliance between America and France that might have existed at the time. This American perception that French people aren't going to suffer Americans gladly and they're going to be unhelpful. So there's all
Mm.
that bureaucracy of, nobody really even seems that helpful to him.
Oh.
If he comes on too strong, they're kind of like, no, we're going to put you in your place. Like, manage your expectations. You're one of many people. You're not, what's happening to you might just be some fluke that you don't fully understand our culture. Um, and so this uneasy alliance that he has with Michelle is seemed to me to kind of to just sort of show in international relationships and all the international things going on in the 80s, maybe at a time where our government was conservative and the tensions were even stronger between France and US, that if they really needed to cooperate, there would be a lack of fundamental trust that
Hmm.
either will get what they really need out of the other, and that gets in their way at every turn. And I think it just kind of shows, that lack of trust can keep real problems from getting solved in the world when it occurs. And just like Americans often are, Harrison Ford's character is a bit oblivious to the fact that people would have that perception of his dilemma, his plight.
And that's a very interesting read of the film, and I think it's very valid and supported because there's so many details in this film that are not necessary if this is just a straightforward thriller. Like, why is the MacGuffin inside a Statue of Liberty
Mm-hmm.
a gift from the French to the United States? Like, there's things going on here that Roman Polanski's layering in here that are very important and significant to the underlying meaning of what's going on. And it is a very interesting dynamic between them because you have Walker who is you have him show up as like my wife is missing, and he's then that Harrison Ford like kind of like what you're gonna wind up seeing in The Fugitive a lot. It's like, I didn't kill my wife, and like that kind of feeling. And the friends are like, dude, come on, like you're just a guy. And he has trouble processing. And even when he shows up, like I love John Mahoney because I watch a lot of Frasier growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and him being the US embassy official and just being completely unhelpful too. And
Yeah,
like nobody's helpful. Like by the end, like he has to set this all up on his own. It's just like, screw all of you, doing this my way, which also is also very American too. When it's just like, no,
yeah,
screw it, just do it my way. And there is that. I love that layer to the character of Michelle. And Senya gives such a great performance. I thought she was fantastic in this. She's alluring and a little dangerous. There's a little femme fatale, noirish kind of vibe to her, but she's a survivor. She's a fighter. She needs to do what she needs to do. This is something that Walker has never had to worry about in his life. Like
Yeah.
her whole entire life is piecing things together and trying to survive and scratch. And like he's a comfortable dude. He's a doctor. He has a good wife. Has a good life. He's on vacation, and this is what pushes him into that space. He's in her world, and she's still navigating it like it's her world, and he's a bit too oblivious to understand. But like you can tell he has this bit of a connection with her. She has a bit of a connection with him. Obviously, he feels for her by the end with the tragic result of her presence in this film. And which also, side note, that was a very intense uh like final sequence of this movie, how it's shot, the awkwardness of it. Love an awkward violent sequence because action's never clean.
Yes.
And it felt very natural. Like it's gonna go how any of you planned. It's gonna be really awkward and people are gonna wind up hurt, and that's exactly what happens. But their dynamic is so interesting and reflective of this whole dynamic. And like even the players who else want this stuff is just like, oh, this is like late 80s 101 of
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
geopolitical elements
Yeah.
rolling in here. So that's how you make a straightforward thriller more interesting. You layer all of these elements in. And you know, I could quick tangent on Harrison Ford. I completely understand why he hates Han Solo and Star Wars so much. Because like for Star Wars, Han Solo is such an interesting character because like he's morally gray, but actually at the end of the day, he's not that interesting of a character. He's just more interesting compared to, all the archetypes in this. I can tell Harrison Ford's the kind of actor that hates the fact that he's a famous leading man type because he just wants to have more interesting, fun things to do and stuff, which I think is why he's loving. I love the show Shrinking, and he's probably doing some of his best work at this stage in his career because he just gets to be somebody interesting. And this film gives him space to lean into some of those things. I love that really awkward scene where he runs into his colleagues in the train station and like he has coke under his and just
Yeah.
like him like trying to like slowly like push it away and the will they acknowledge like for them he's totally running around with this young woman,
Yeah.
where's your wife? And there's all that like playful interaction, but like we know so much more wrong going on in this moment. And it's so fascinating. And like he does that great Harrison Ford run. I love watching Harrison
Mm.
Ford run because it looks slightly awkward, but also like he's in that moment chasing after her afterwards. And the more I talk about this, the more layers peel back to this. This is like a sneakily a lot more layered, interesting film than like you could totally just watch this as just a thriller, and it works that way. You have the tight cinematography, the sharp looking look to the film. There's good tension. Whenever Ennio Morricone's score does come in, it's interesting and dynamic and adds little interesting flourishings to things, but no, like I can see why somebody like Harrison Ford, especially at this point in his career, is like, no, I want to do something different here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I haven't seen Shrinking yet, so that's another recommendation that I have to dive into. Did you know that the first kind of ramshackle guy that helps him out at the espresso shop across the street, who brings him out into the alley and says he saw his wife get pushed into a car? That's Dominique Pignon, who later starred in the movie Delicatessen by the French duo Genet and Caro. And it's just so wild to see him just as this like character actor, and then he later got to have his a movie centered around him with his odd features and kind of comic
What's
vibe.
so funny is I was just scrolling through IMDb, was trying to make sure there's anybody I didn't pick up on because I was looking for John Mahoney, and I saw him pop up, and I'm like, wait, where was he in the movie? So now next time I watch this, I have to like pinpoint him because one, he's a very interesting looking actor who
Hmm.
has a very distinct look to him, and he stands out. And I am a huge fan of Jeunet and Caro's work with whether it's Delicatessen or City of Lost Children or Amelie. And he even popped up in the extremely weird, bonkers Alien Resurrection.
Yes.
Uh, as well, because like basically wherever Jeunet goes at this point, he shows up too. And it's so fun seeing him pop up in things. And I did notice that. And I love little things like that where you just randomly see. My last episode I recorded, we were Chris Roberts and I were talking about The Long Goodbye
Yeah.
with Elliot Gould, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is just randomly there as a henchman with a mustache. And I'm just like, there's no, well, obviously I miss Dominique Pinon here, but like there's no way missing Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like it stands out like a monster of a man. So I'm like, there he is.
Mm,
So it's always fun having those little layers. But no, he's really fun character actor that I love seeing pop up and stuff for sure.
yeah.
But yeah, I guess Carl, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to throw out about Frantic?
Oh, yeah. I guess it's kind of, I'm dying to just acknowledge that there's like two or three scenes, I guess even if you include the final showdown, where it is an example of a kind of writing that doesn't feel that common in thrillers anymore, where there is just kind of unhinged chaos, and it almost seems like the writer went into the scene, didn't know how it was going to play out, came up after a few revisions with some crazy ideas, and didn't like fully clean it up or try to
Mm,
like simplify it and let it be messy. And like you said, the messy action. There's a scene in the parking garage that just devolves into pure chaos
yeah,
that involves, him trying to drive a car with a dead driver in the seat and getting out in the street as people look at this shot man drooping out of the car.
and they're just
Um,
like, let's get out of here.
and a scene where him and Emmanuel Signet and meet the actor you were just saying at the diner, at the cafe.
Yeah,
They do this exchange. He meets the embassy people, and it just evolves into pure chaos with, her instinctually grabbing the detonator,
yeah.
and all of a sudden there's Mace, and even he gets Mace, but she actually does want him to come with her, and it's just like the kind of like total unpredictable messiness that a writer would just second guess, and a studio head would say, why don't you just make it more about how they almost got shot, like instead of like this almost comedic, like, you know, almost satirical, ridiculous way
Eh,
these scenes play out.
there's some crazy antics that go on in this, and it like that feels like an appropriate word because it does feel so like you can tell that this is playing on a lot of thrillers and understanding like things are messy. And I'll go off on a little tangent if I may here, because like one of my biggest frustrations is people not appreciating just being surprised by a movie.
Mm,
Because like this is why it's terrible being a part of any fandom because like whether it's Star Wars or anything, people just complain this didn't go how I wanted it, and like having to listen to the discourse about like even like the Stranger Things finale on New Year's Eve, I'm just like I don't even want to listen to this because people for some reason think they want to see things play out exactly how they want them, and then it's like why are you watching this in the first place then? Just make it up in your head then, or
yeah.
get a bunch of money and buy the rights to something and make it how you want it. But I love films that subvert expectations, shock you, and put you on your toes because those are interesting. I'm a huge fan of the Coen brothers. They are my favorite filmmakers, and they understand how to make awkward violence and crazy stuff
Chaos,
happens that
unhinged.
you'll never see coming. I think the first film I ever saw of theirs was my first ever film club meeting when I went away to college, and they had Burn After Reading,
Mm,
which that movie is just like 40 minutes of chaos. Like what? Even to the point where J.K. Simmons at the end is like, Homer, what did we learn from this? Oh no, giant clusters. like whatever the hell happened. And like that Brad Pitt moment is shocking in that movie, and you're just like, whoa, wait a minute. And it recontextualizes things. So like I love when a film takes chances and makes things unexpected, messy, and put you on your toes because I don't want to know exactly how this movie's going to wind up. I don't want to know exactly how this scene's going to wind up. I want to get lost in the experience. And Frantic had that kind of energy where I would get lost in it.
I'll take 1 point away from the movie for for Michelle's that character's fate being predictable. That is the few times she comes so close to being in danger, you're like,
Yeah.
he's gonna live, she's not gonna live because he's Harrison Ford and she's a tragic character, and that's kind of mired in old ideas that are just I don't think every director at that time would have really thought twice about her fate, but as you see it play out over and over movies and great film critics comment on it, it just implies that a woman who is involved in crime is like her life is worth less, and she could only have a tragic end in a movie. And it does this very interesting thing where they're both in red dresses at the end and has this feeling of like which woman would if it came down to it would he you know go out of his way to save. Of course it's going to be his wife, but he does more for her in those key moments than is expected, and so it is kind of poignant, but I just wish she didn't die.
Well, and that's an interesting point because he does wind up putting himself in danger to try to protect her, which right in front of his wife too, who probably has so many questions
Mhm.
this whole entire situation. But no, it is like that is where the film it's like, well, it's time to like wrap this up and wraps it up clean because that Michelle dying is a lot cleaner
Mm.
of an ending, especially for Richard,
Yeah,
because then it closes the door on
yeah.
anything that would have possibly been going on there. And he just has his wife and he walks off into the sunset with his wife and they're gonna be okay. Traumatized, but okay. But like uh that's true. And that's a little bit it's definitely unfortunate that with the film that does keep you on your toes throughout the whole time, I don't know if that was like a studio note. It's like, nah, we need to clean this up. And but it is a pretty common trope of, the messier, unpredictable, woman who's involved in these I'm using air quotes everyone who's listening to this these like these seedier kinds of lifestyles and he's the one who winds up getting sacrificed at the end so he could have a happy perfect ending
Mhm.
with his wife because if they wound up killing the wife at the end of this movie that would have been a rug pull for sure and honestly based off of other films from this filmmaker I would have half expected
Yeah,
that, to be perfectly honest. Like,
yeah.
if you ever watched Rosemary's Baby, what a rug pull that is.
Yeah,
And it's just like, you could have went there, but you didn't.
yeah.
So, but in the end, maybe it leans a little too cleanly into wrapping it up nicely, but it was certainly an interesting ride. But I appreciate you bringing up that point because it does feel like, well, this is late 80s. We need to have a nice, happy ending here.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, Carl, I appreciate you coming on and chatting about this thriller, which I don't think I've ever heard of this movie, to be perfectly honest, before adding this to my watch list. And I was glad that I did because I do appreciate seeing some Harrison Ford getting outside of that like box of leading man space and doing something a little bit more interesting. But thank you so much for
Absolutely.
coming on.
Thanks, Shane. It was a pleasure.
And thank all of you for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What's your favorite, like, how do I put this, non-franchise Harrison Ford performance? So we're not talking Star Wars or Indiana Jones, stuff like that, where he just, isn't a space outlaw in space or a professor archaeologist superhero. But what's your favorite Harrison Ford film that puts them a little bit out of that space. And make sure to follow, or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. The SPDM Crew Podcasting Network is ever expanding. There's so many great shows with all different types of interests. A lot of ones, a lot about movies. So if you love movies, we have that. And if you want to join the crew as a guest on a show like this, which always looking for some fresh takes and perspectives on some of these random movies that we wind up talking about on here, or any of our other shows, or you have an idea for your own podcast, reach out to us on our website. And if you like our logo, check out HiFlyer Creative for all your digital marketing needs. But most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network.